Expenses for Computex paid for in part by ASRock. Have you considered them for your next build? Motherboards, graphics cards, even small form factor bare bones machines that we've reviewed, like the Desk Meat. ASRock motherboards, the ASRock Steel Legend Value Champions. They've got some pretty good stuff. Be sure to check out ASRock for your next build. Look who I ran into in Taipei.
Hello.
Listen, we're going to start a new organization.
Oh, yeah. Wendell pitched this idea to me 6 hours ago.
Yeah. I think
and I'm on board.
We want to be the change
that
you want to see.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Yes, be
That's
the change you want to see.
That's right. Yeah, we were talking about standards and proprietary standards. And our problem with, like, for example, the Corsair height Lian Li cluster, I don't know if you're allowed to swear on your channel, of RGB LEDs and everything else.
Yeah, I don't care. It's a mess. it's kind of a shit show. So our idea is to at least document this kind of stuff. So if you have an RGB controller, or you have a Corsair header, or you have something that you need to interface with, that there's documentation. So that makes the Linux people happy. That makes the people that have hardware that is maybe older than manufacturers want to support happy.
I think you're shooting a little too high if you want Linux people to be happy.
Computex is over now, and it was better seeing everybody and just hanging out. And I think the last Computex was like 3 buildings, plus there was also stuff in the 101.
Yeah.
None of that this year. It was on 2 floors of one building plus another building.
I didn't even go over to the other building.
Yeah, there were keynotes. That's where Jensen was.
We covered that from the room so we could stay more than throwing distance away from him.
something restraining order.
Get chairs thrown at me for. Yeah, we were a little critical of the keynote. I don't know if did you watch that one? Okay, don't bother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So standards.
Yeah, standards. Standards would be good. Well, that was actually the big thing. I mean, the elephant in the room is ARM, but it's not just NVIDIA's ARM CPU, but it's also Ampere. I feel like that NVIDIA stole a little bit of Ampere's thunder, and Ampere, I think, has done a little bit more of the work, maybe. So it's just like, wait, Jensen's going to get all the glory for ARM, but Ampere's been here doing all this other stuff.
Well, that's why they were trying to buy ARM, right? The Grace Hopper stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which that concerns me, like the consolidation of power.
Yeah.
Because it's a little different than medium-sized game studio buys small game studio, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, it is impossible for any new company to start competing with NVIDIA, Intel, AMD because of not just licensing, but you need like billions of dollars of fab.
No, and ARM has had a lot of wins, like with Graviton on Amazon. And so it's going to be a long time before you see ARM, I think, work viably for laptops and desktops and that kind of stuff. But for servers, ARM could be a real threat, certainly to Intel, and maybe less so to AMD, because Intel's kind of been on the struggle bus. Sorry, Intel.
Someone told me once that Intel, actually, I don't know, I think it was David Cantor, if you know him. I think he made a comment to me once about Intel needs to be more afraid of ARM than of AMD in many capacities.
Yeah.
And I don't really follow the server market much, but I mean, it sounds like that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just ARM is able to iterate enough that eventually you're going to be hitting silicon limits and physics limits and that kind of thing. It's not really, the meme is like, oh, x86 is really complicated, but under the hood, x86 isn't as much of a thing. And the news this show was, hey, ARM is going to eliminate 32-bit. It's basically going to be all 64-bit. And then we got exactly the same news out of Intel just a week before that. It's like, hey, we're going to pull all the 32-bit stuff out of the microcode because it's going to make things simpler. And it's like, well, these sound like the same things to me. So take consoles, for example. You look at consoles, and those would be the ideal platform for ARM because game developers could do their own thing, and they could optimize the video hardware and blah, blah, blah. But, both video game console companies are kind of moving in a different direction.
Both?
All three? Until we really get all the dots being connected for those kind of entertainment devices and laptops. Apple is Apple, but they launched the M1, and the M1 was really faster than everything else they had, but they did the M2, and it was an incremental improvement. and then it looks like the M3 is going to be an incremental improvement. It's not those, like from the gain from not M1 to M1 was huge, but we have not seen those kinds of gains. We haven't even seen the kinds of gains that AMD has been doing with their Zen core and like the Zen process anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, like first Zen, I think everyone expected to be huge because you can't divide by 0. And AMD, the gains for like X3D were much better than I think I expected initially. But in terms of just like gen on gen, it's going to slow down, obviously.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It seemed to me like Lisa Su was also putting a lot of designs on AI, but they weren't really here at Computex. And so maybe there's an upcoming event for AI and high performance compute and everything else that they just weren't quite ready for Computex. And maybe they knew what was coming with NVIDIA, and it's like, okay, we'll wait for that to die down, and then we'll come with something. I don't know.
Do you? So this isn't related to standards anything, but related to NVIDIA. Do you feel like NVIDIA's current trajectory is moving away from or in any way abandoning the gaming market? Do you think they're...
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your comment on that?
Yeah, I think...
I'm interviewing you on your own channel, sorry.
No,
I didn't intend to do that. It's what happens when I hold the microphone.
No, it's good. Well, we can discuss. I can ask you the same question. Because their wafer allocation is basically fixed, yeah, it's in the shareholders' interest, everybody else's best interest. The only reason really to go with the gaming stuff is to enable people that want to experiment with the home AI stack so that they get trapped in the CUDA ecosystem. And so maybe that's why we see 4090s as opposed to 4060 Ti's.
Right. I mean, I think when we were watching it, I would assume that they'll continue to ship gaming GPUs just because it's a big market. You can't really walk away from it. What I don't know is if they care that people are upset there's nothing affordable.
Yeah.
And it seems that they used to, but maybe with the reduced reliance on gaming, they no longer have to care.
Well, I need to make sure that I really fully understand what Jensen was saying they're going to do with the Grace Hopper platform, but it seemed like a lot of the enterprise software licensing fees.
Wendell.exe has stopped responding.
So as far as like the enterprise licensing fees go, it seemed like Jensen was saying, hey, if you've got an existing platform, we're going to stop charging you yearly if you move to the Grace Hopper platform. And that's huge. There's a ton of companies out there that will jettison their existing x86 infrastructure plus their older generation NVIDIA and immediately adopt Grace Hopper, which could be how he gets a bunch of rapid adoption. And then once you're on that treadmill, that's another loss of market for x86 in general.
You said something about not betting against Lisa Su.
Yeah, so it's really just, okay, Lisa Su is coming for AI. Do you want to bet against Lisa Su? I mean, she came for Intel.
And it worked. I mean, so I think Intel's in a much better spot than they used to be on the 13th gen. They're more competitive now, much more interesting from a price perspective, where it seems like AMD got maybe a little cocky with the pricing. I don't know, where they didn't really, they kind of left the low-end market like NVIDIA's doing now on GPUs. And I don't know, you've observed the industry long enough. Is this natural ebb and flow where when one of them gets a power position, suddenly they can charge more and then it comes down, or is this like different?
I don't know that that AMD has built up the war chest to make the moves that they would really, if they're going to bet the company moves, they're going to have to bet everything in order to do that, to pull out some wins in AI. And they may not be ready to go that all in, but they've certainly gone all in on the supercompute, and the supercompute people are happy. And so the last big missing piece is the software ecosystem. And that's what I've been following as closely as I can for the last year. And AMD really is spending a lot more money than people realize in the software ecosystem.
So where does AMD, if it wants to build a war chest to compete in AI, where does it dedicate its resources to because it needs to compete somewhere it can to build up money, so where does it do that?
Right now, that's still EPYC. And I think that maybe AMD even expected Sapphire Rapids to be better than it was, because it seems like it's very difficult, even in these uncertain economic times, to get your hands on EPYC hardware, like especially the highest end stuff. So Jensen was saying that Intel's fab looks good, and maybe they could have GPUs made there instead of TSMC. But really, Jensen, I think that that's probably a negotiation tactic. even if the wafer was hot garbage from Intel, he would say that to go back to TSMC and say, I don't know. Because he literally did that with Samsung, and TSMC said, all right, go to Samsung. And then we had some not great GPUs.
Wendell, I'm going to hand the mic back to you.
Oh, yeah, right. That's fine. Thanks for hanging out. I mean, where do you see all this going?
I think for the next few years, it'll feel like status quo but expensive. And after that, without sufficient competitive pressure from Intel and AMD, I do think NVIDIA is going to be like, who cares about the low end? Like, yeah, pull all the cards up higher price, rename them, whatever. They're going to buy them anyway.
Do you think people understand that like the 4090 at $2,000 is basically low-end throwaway money when we're talking about AI GPUs?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
That really, I mean, don't you think that's the case?
I do think that's the case. I know we don't do AI, but for anything that's like any kind of rendering, any CUDA-based, anything like that, I mean, we use 4090s. I bought a laptop with a 4090 in it, and it is impressively good for the price if you're a business. If you can make money with the thing, like NVIDIA's in a really strong business-to-business position, and I think that's why I don't think they're forgetting low-end consumer. I think they just don't care.
Well, I think that's enough rambling from us. Any parting words of wisdom from Taipei? It's great to be back.
It is great to be back. I think despite some, I do have some words of wisdom, I guess. Despite the negativity surrounding the new GPUs leading into the show, I'm actually really excited overall for where the industry is. There's a lot of really cool stuff in parts of the industry like cases, coolers, power supplies that aren't GPUs and CPUs, and it's easy to forget those components because they're not as flashy, but they're really important and it all works together. So I think despite some of the pessimism with the cards, genuinely, like, we're at least trending in a better direction than 2021.
Yeah, it seems like overall, I would agree with that. And it probably is good ultimately for hardware enthusiasts and people that just want to tinker with technology and maybe make that a part of your career path.
Yeah, I was expecting you to say, overall, we're doomed. Seems more like a Wendell thing to say. No, you're completely wrong. There's a dystopian hellscape and we're all doomed.
I do worry. I worry a lot, but it's probably fine. All right.
It's probably fine.
We'll catch you in the next one.